Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Paul and Suzanne, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Dave Alexander, and I wanted to thank everyone for joining the webinar this afternoon. We're very excited to have veteran Microsoft Office instructor Suzanne Fell, along with veteran instructional designer and course developer Paul Miller with us today. I'm a higher ed course consultant with TestOut, and for those not familiar with us, we are an IT and Microsoft Office certification courseware provider, specializing in competency-based training through the software lab simulation. The purpose of this webinar today is to learn from Suzanne and Paul about the challenges of teaching computers and Microsoft Office to students in today's digital world and ways to overcome those challenges. At the end of the webinar, we will be doing a question and answer session, and you who are listening in, and if you have any questions come to your mind, please submit them in the question section found at the bottom of the GoToWebinar sidebar, and we will go through the questions. After my introduction of Suzanne and Paul, Suzanne will present to us, followed by Paul, and then we'll have the Q&A. So I'm excited to introduce Suzanne Fell to you. She has been teaching Office administration skills and Microsoft Office applications at Maranatha Baptist University since 1990. And she has vast experience reviewing and developing new curricula, advising students within the Office administration program, and providing career guidance and job placement for secretarial students. She has many years of experience teaching Microsoft Office using textbooks and internet-based courseware. And Suzanne holds a bachelor's degree in business education from Bob Jones University and a master's degree from University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, also in business education. She holds multiple Microsoft Office Specialist certifications in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and she also holds the TestOut Desktop Pro certification. Paul Miller has over 25 years of instructional design and teaching experience. He started his career as an instructional designer for Novell, designing computer-based training for developers. He later worked for the College of Engineering at BYU, Brigham Young University, assisting faculty with online course development. While earning a PhD in ethics, Paul taught for several years as an adjunct instructor and writing director at the Claremont Colleges in Southern California. For the past 5 years, he has been the lead instructional designer for TestOut's Microsoft Office courseware, Desktop Pro. And in addition to his doctorate from Claremont Graduate University, Paul holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master's in instructional design, both from Brigham Young University. He also holds multiple Microsoft Office Specialist certifications. Okay, with those introductions, I will now pass things over to Suzanne.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that intro, Dave. I started teaching at a college right out of college myself while earning my master's degree. Now, this is going to make me sound old, but I now have I have students in my class now whose parents I taught. And they are very different creatures from their parents. I know because I have a few living at home with me right now. So take a step back in time and think about a generation ago, perhaps maybe when you were in school. Maybe it wasn't as long as when I was in school. But back in that classroom, we had students that actually listened to lectures. They probably even brought pencils and pens to class and took notes. In fact, they even brought textbooks to class. Students nowadays are very different. They may still listen to lectures and take notes, but it seems to me that I almost have to teach them to take notes because they're not used to it. You have probably seen articles or even had webinars on how to deal with millennials. And one of the terms we call is digital natives. They are very different from us. We recently had a guest speaker on campus that her topic was on how to relate between to millennials. And one of the statistics she said is that 90% of 18 to 29-year-olds actually sleep with their cell phones in or right next to their bed. And I thought that was hilarious. And then I realized that my own kids did that. And in fact, I have my cell phone by my dresser as well. I don't have it in my hand. But yes, we are teaching to a very different audience. Another thing that students want is they are really consumers of education. They desire choices in how, where, and when they learn. And if you have any teaching experience at all, you know that they are definitely multitaskers. If you've ever had to try to have a cell phone policy in class, there's, all kinds of policies on or ideas on either taking their phones away or letting them use them. You know that they love to use their cell phones and they are constantly multitasking. The challenge that we have as instructors is how to relate computers, our technology today, to our classrooms. Now, some things, of course, never change. People are people. We still face differing learning styles between students. There are students that are more visual, and I think in particular, students nowadays are very visually oriented. They also one thing that also never doesn't change is that feedback is very essential to learning. The faster you get feedback on what you're doing and on an assignment, the better the learning process is. You understand what you've done incorrectly. You're able to fix it right away. And the last thing is practice, practice, practice. If any of you have had to ever to learn an instrument, you know that it was kind of like an everyday thing. You had to practice. And the same way with technology, the more you practice it, the better that concept is ingrained. However, our students tend to be, and we as humans, we tend to be lazy. We try to get away with as little as possible. In fact, students I found will seek the easiest path to achievement built around the course requirements that you have. However, I believe that in my classes this year, the TestOut has addressed some of these learning fundamentals and made it a little bit more practical for my students to succeed. A colleague of mine in the IT department was the first person to introduce TestOut to me, and he encouraged me to check it out. Our institution at that time was planning a move to Office 2016, and so the time was right to update our software and textbooks. I was a little hesitant at first to go textless, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to check it out, especially knowing that our students had some challenges with our current program. So I'd like to kind of list on this slide a comparison of my previous, which was previous to this year, our previous textbook classes versus what I am doing now with TestOut. So first of all, here at our institution, we had multiple one-credit Microsoft application courses. Each of those required a separate textbook and an online license. Now, that online license could have applied to multiple classes, but still, the amount of money that students were paying for textbooks was getting to be prohibitive. The primary student learning activity was, of course, text instruction and in working in the live application, completing assignments, but primarily text instruction tutorial. The assignments were weekly, so they had to turn things in every week. Because it was assignments that they turned in on a live application, I was grading them manually. I got the feedback to them within a week, but sometimes that seemed to be too long. And we also offered Microsoft Office Specialist certification here. We were a testing center here at Maranatha. The disadvantages, however, is that because it cost extra and because I didn't really feel that all students could pass it, we didn't require it. Although it was a tremendous advantage to have that opportunity for students on campus, few students actually took advantage of it. So I would say about 10% took advantage of the certification. Now, since we're using TestOut, we have switched from one-credit classes. We kind of revised our curriculum to include everything in a 3-credit computer applications course using the Desktop Pro Plus license. When Paul Miller speaks, he'll probably talk about the differences between Desktop Pro and Desktop Pro Plus. The Plus includes a little bit more curriculum. The primary student learning activity now, instead of text instruction, is hands-on simulations. Now, the students are learning by watching videos, but they're very engaged in the learning because they right away begin doing the labs. The assignments are immediately graded, scored, and feedback is given. In fact, I allow students to do their assignments until they get it right. And so the students love that. When I first introduced that in the syllabus, they ask a question, did you say that right? Did you say that we can do them as many times as we can till we get it 100%? I'm like, yes. And they're like, yes. And then finally, while we could still offer Microsoft certification, because we had so few students actually take advantage of it, we decided to stick with Desktop Pro certification. For one thing, it was included in the license cost. That means that all students could participate. And we've been very happy with the results of that, which I'll share a little bit later. Another thing that the TestOut software includes is Microsoft Office certification preparation. So it has practice tests in it. And so students, if they do want to take that next step to MOS certification, they're able to do that. Now it's been a year and 7 computer app courses later, 2 of which have been online, teaching with TestOut, and students are learning. Why? Well, my first point is it's enjoyable. And students really love the learning options. The first part of the learning process gives them an option of how they want to view the information. They can watch a video with or without transcript, which I highly recommend. Another thing that they love is that they can adjust the audio. So the audio can go as fast as they want it to go. I was just in my class an hour ago watching a student listen to the audio, and he had on headphones, so I wasn't sure how I couldn't hear what the speaker was actually, what speed he was speaking at. So I asked him, I said, that sounds like it's going about 3 times as fast as it should. And he says, well, actually it's 1.8. But he was getting the information because he can view the transcript on the side along with the video, and he can also move to the points that he's not clear about or switch around and repeat anything. The TestOut program also includes the printable text. And so it kind of is like fact sheets. I don't think my students really print them, but they're able to go to them for if they need any follow-up or they need to go back after they do the applied labs and they're not sure about something and go back and check on those text printouts. The other thing that's included with the video and the learning process is a lot of demonstration. So my students like that it's not just talking heads. I asked a few of my students in my classes this semester, well, what do you like about TestOut? Because I told them I was going to do a webinar. And so one student raised her hand and she said, and this is going to sound just like a student, it's nice that it's not a massive book that we have to carry around. We are technology people and books are annoying. Well, that made me laugh. And then another student raised his hand, and he was probably a little bit more of a thinker. And he said, it gives us kinesthetic understanding of how to use a computer. And he's right. They love the hands-on opportunity. And when you include as many senses as possible, learning happens a lot easier than just following text points and instruction in a textbook. So my second point is that TestOut is also engaging. Once they have the learning process taken care of, they move right away onto the labs. And there's 2 sets of labs. There are the skills and challenge labs, which are the formative process, and then there are applied labs, which I refer to as a summative to make sure that they really learned. The things that students love about these labs is that it's not just a certain way that they have to complete them. There's multiple paths to completion. And I have worked with other types of software in which they were very prescriptive in how the task had to be accomplished, and students became frustrated with that. Another thing about the labs is that with the skills and challenges, immediate feedback on every single task. And they have to repeat that task until they get it right. They don't have to, I guess, but they won't get points for it. They can also get help in the skills and challenge labs in text or video format, and this really reinforces their critical thinking skills, especially when they get to the applied labs where the helps are removed. And I'm sure Mr. Paul Miller will explain a little bit more and give you a demo on that. And then my last point is it truly is effective, not only because of the first 2 points, but the pedagogy that TestOut has developed really supports a mastery learning style in which there's a 3-step process where they learn, listen, and watch. They see how to do it. They practice the labs with help. This is the formative assessment. It gives the opportunity to learn with as much help as they need and to continue to attempt that task until it's completed. And then the step 3 is that they then can complete those labs with help. And these are designed to be the summative assessment. They should have had enough practice now to complete these without help. I would say that most of my students achieve 100% on these labs since I allow them to complete them as many times as they want. For some students, this gives them opportunity to work through and really learn. Students that find this easy may only take a few minutes, 1 or 2 times to complete. But those students who struggle with learning or computers may take a little bit longer, but they really feel a sense of accomplishment and achievement when they take the time to work through and solve problems. It really helps them develop those critical thinking skills. Last semester, I had an online class, and I have either adult learners, high schoolers, and a real mixed bag of different types of learners. And she left this comment for me at the end of my class. She was a very tentative learner when she started. She confided that she was pretty intimidated by this course since she only knew Facebook and some typing in Word. And I was really proud of her, how much she worked and achieved. She learned not only the basics of computing and Word, but PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, and some Access. She didn't even know what those programs were before she started the class. And she felt, if you're reading this on the slide, she felt like she was, in fact, competing with the class, which she really wasn't competing, but she felt that way. Best of all, I'm happy to say she passed the certification at the end. That included Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. She was a really happy camper, and at the end of the course, she sent this comment to me, and she also gave me permission to share, just in case you were wondering. I hope you had time to read through that. I'm not going to take the time to read all of that. Some instructor tips for you as you work on your curriculum. I know when you're contemplating changing textbooks, changing curriculum, it's always that, oh, I wonder how long this is going to take, or how much time am I now going to have to spend prepping for additional text. That always runs through our minds as instructors because it's a learning process. But one of the things I highly recommend with this curriculum especially is to do what your students are doing. Work through the curriculum with your students. I completed most of the labs and took the exams before the students did because I wanted to know what they were learning and to put myself in their shoes, so to speak. I then knew how long the exams would take and if there were any tricky spots in the labs to explain. Now, I usually told them also how long it took me. All of the exams, the pre-built exams that are in Desktop Pro Plus, have 60 minutes to complete. I usually completed them with between 15 and 20 minutes. So I told my students, okay, now you have all the class period, but it only took me 20 minutes, and they'd always try to beat me. Some of them did, but most of them didn't. And that's okay. My second tip is to set your course policies to enforce those proven learning practices. And I'll give you one example. The applied labs, I allow students to take those more than one time. And that allows them to practice and really get the concepts. There are certain things that will enforce them to learn the content as well, making sure that you require the labs to be done. Because they will try to, students are students, they'll try to do as little as possible to get the best grade they can. But set your course policies to enforce the learning. And then my last tip is to keep those open lines of communication. While TestOut may be considered by some to be an all-inclusive course in a box, The instructor really needs to be visible and available for help and feedback and able to add value to the course. As an example of how my slides are set up, the next slide shows a visual of the first 8 weeks of a coursework of my 15-week course. So I just wanted to point out a couple things. The 3-credit class, it's a 3-credit class, that meets once a week with lessons due 2 other times during the week. I figured out how and when to assign lessons because TestOut includes approximate lesson times in its instructor materials as well as everything else that's included in each lesson. So I set assignments to be due at midnight because the filtering tools in the lesson reports filter by day, and that was easier for me. I scheduled exams during the times that we met because I didn't want students collaborating during the test. Most didn't take the entire hour, but the remaining time was spent on starting lessons or on reviewing difficult concepts. On non-exam class days, I didn't just have them work in TestOut. I prepared activities that we completed together as a class and that I felt were especially important or that added to the curriculum. For example, on February 27th, we were in a Word unit, and the last lesson, 3.13, is on macros, which are taught and demonstrated but not simulated. So as a class, we planned, completed, and executed a macro which automatically created an MLA formatted paper from the default template. It had fill-in fields and everything. The students loved it because they all had MLA papers to complete during the semester. So that was something that was really valuable. Finally, one aspect of TestOut that I really love is the inclusion of Desktop Pro certification, and I alluded to this earlier. I love that it's part of the license, and again, this certification includes Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I require this as their final exam, and I have had 5 sections complete this with very positive results. Our pass rate average, as you can see that there, is 92.86 right now compared to the national average of 68%. Certification is something that students can take away from the course, put it on their resume, even if they didn't pass the class because of poor work habits, they can take certification away with them. And for those of you that are in higher ed institutions, retention is a really big deal right now. And since this is typically a freshman level class, you also know that early success in those first semester classes are key to keeping students long term. For me, I believe that TestOut has been a key factor at my institution in helping students succeed, especially those that are challenged academically or simply not motivated. So I appreciate and thank you for your attention. I welcome any questions during the Q&A time. And Paul Miller, lead instructional designer for TestOut, will now be demonstrating the TestOut interface.
Okay, wonderful. And well, first of all, I just wanted to thank Suzanne for her presentation. And it's pretty clear that, Suzanne, that your success in the classroom shows what's possible when a great instructor uses great online learning tools to help students achieve mastery. And as proud as we are of our TestOut courseware, we fully recognize that instructors play an indispensable role in student learning. You got to have both, or some students will inevitably fall through the cracks. So I think it's important to emphasize the importance of good instructors who care about the students, who care about learning and leading them through to mastery. Since many of you on today's webinar have not seen Desktop Pro courseware, and actually I'm going to go back to the initial screen. This is the screen that students will see when they log in. We call our course platform for delivering training LabSim, and this is the LabSim course. Suzanne mentioned that she uses the Desktop Pro Plus course. I'm going to be demonstrating Desktop Pro, and just quickly, the differences. Desktop Pro Plus goes beyond Desktop Pro and focusing a little bit more on the MOS objectives for passing the Microsoft exams. And Desktop Pro Plus also has Microsoft Outlook, which Pro does not. Desktop Pro has, and I'll go into the course here and show you the table of contents. Desktop Pro has a computer and internet basics for those for the classes that would want to cover some file management and other things before the students start learning Microsoft Office applications. And then Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Access. Then we have practice exams for our certification, and then students can take the certification typically at the end of the class, and very often as the final exam. So let me just mention, first of all, when students, the TestOut courses are really simple to set up, easy to set up. The students, all they need is an access code, and they can begin learning immediately. The lab assignments they're pre-assigned, so the students could just jump right in, start watching videos, and begin learning. So I'm going to go into a couple of different sections. I would like to start out with before we get into Office applications, computer and internet basics. One of the most popular sections is file management. Many students who have not used the desktop computer or have a lot of experience with a file system, this is a section that they will go into. I'm going to show you just briefly a video. And I'm going to start it and then close it because the webinar doesn't stream this very well. But the students will see an instructor. And then let me pause this. So we'll just briefly see an instructor. And students like seeing instructors because, especially for online students, it feels like they have a personal tutor leading them through the content. And then a demonstration will begin almost within like 10 or 15 seconds in most cases. So that's the video. We have text, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking at either one of those. But I want to start off with a lab. And Suzanne mentioned the different levels of labs that we have. I'm going to open up this one right here. It's called the Skills Lab. Well, it's the first lab that the students would see in most sections. And I'll go ahead and start this. This is a lab where the students are given a set of tasks, one at a time, and they perform the task and get immediate feedback. If they don't know how to perform, if the students know how to perform it, right, they're a little more advanced, then they don't have to worry about the hand holding. They can just jump right in and work through the material and confirm that they know what they're doing. And then, so if students, though, if they are less experienced and they want a little help, they can click a hint. They can click a show me video that will lead them through the exact task. So in this case, I need to create a folder, my file system. So I'll open up File Explorer. And you can do this in many different ways. I can click the new folder command here. I can right click and do new folder that way. It's just different ways that you can perform the task. And then I will, just to give you, and then I get immediate feedback. Task completed, good job, continue to the next task. So it's open path. I can, if I don't know how to do it, I do have help. And then I want to demonstrate one other task. I can look at the drop down here. And I did want to mention also, if students use a hint or watch a video, then they are required to perform the task again without help later on, and that is to assist in the learning mastery. But this is I'm going to go to one of the more difficult tasks just to give you a feel for the variety of simulations that we have available. So this is where we're going to switch to a hardware view. So we're going to look at a hardware simulation. Most of what we have in this course is software simulation, but there are some things that are helpful. So I'm going to go to the hardware view. And students who have not used a thumb drive to plug into a USB port, they'll get a chance to simulate that. So I'm going to go to the back of the computer, get the thumb drive, drag it over, and insert it. We have some training for students on how to use the hardware simulations, which are a little more advanced. So there we have, we've inserted it, and then we return to the operating system. And open up File Explorer, verify that we now have our jump drive here. And then there are different ways. So we're supposed to eject the device. We can do it over here, we can do it here, and then we will get our confirmation. So eject. And then we close out of that, go back to the computer, and we completed it. So that's one of the more advanced tasks that the students are required to perform, but I just wanted to show that to give you a feel for both the hardware and the software simulations. So once I'm done, if I finish all of the tasks, then it will just complete by itself. But if I want to, I can go ahead and exit out of here, see how I did. I performed 2 tasks correctly, and I can come back in later and finish the task that I did not complete. So that's one type of lab. And now I'm going to go to Excel. And I want to show you a couple of other lab types. And then I want to leave plenty of time for questions here at the end. So let's go into formulas in Excel. There's a skills lab. I'm not going to go into that one. We saw an example of a skills lab in the other section. So I'll start this lab. The challenge lab is a little different. It builds on what the students, it just gives students more practice after they complete the skills lab. And I'm going to go ahead and start. You'll notice this leaderboard here, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So the students will perform similar tasks as they did in the skills lab. There will be different tasks. But the difference here is that students are going to be timed, just to give a little bit more motivation to improve. Students can come back in to this lab multiple times to improve their time, and they can even, if they would like, they can compete with the class. They won't see anyone else's names, but some of the students appreciate that motivation. So when I'm ready to start, click Begin. Again, this is similar to the other task, but I'm just timed. Now I do have a hint. I don't have a video on these, but I do have a text hint if I get stuck. So on Mike's sheet, yeah, let me just give you a feel for all of these. So these are just different tasks. I can jump around. I can go to sum, count. It'll have me use various formulas in these. So on this first one here, use the sum function to find the total amount of products sold on March. Let's see, Augustus G7. Pressure's on me here to perform these right? So total amount of products sold on March 1st. So I can do this. I can use auto sum here. I can actually type in the sum function there. I'll do it what I think is probably the easiest, right? So we'll do that. Task completed. So I just work my way through each of these tasks. I can get a hint. Now, if I'm in a hurry, right, to the time here, then I'm going to just work through it multiple times until I'm satisfied that I can. One phrase that we like to use at TestOut is click with confidence. That's the goal. The students achieve mastery, proficiency, and they gain confidence as they just practice and practice and practice. And and I'm going to exit out of this here. Done. You can see I performed the one task correctly, and then I can come back in and start as many times as I want. So you see my name appeared here. Students will see their name. Since I don't have very many students in my sample class here, I'm in the second position with only one task performed correctly. But it's really quite fun to see. You can see I'm 16,000 right here in the worldwide, so did not do very well. So that's the challenge lab, and it's quite unique that we use this at TestOut, really to reinforce the students' learning and give them as much practice as they need. Let's skip through this text. And then we have an applied lab, and I'll go ahead and open it. I won't work through very much of this, but this is now a scenario that the students are given where they perform multiple tasks, and then they click done, and they get feedback at the end, immediately at the end of this lab. They don't get the feedback after each task. So it's just kind of building on the learning they've had before. I can look through here and I can enter the formulas, and then when I'm done, I click done and see how we did. And on these labs, since we don't have hints after each task or for each task, we do provide for the students a list of steps. If they missed something, right, here's a suggested way to perform that task. All right, so that's I've really shown all of the lab types that we have in the course. Let me get out of that. That should give you a good feel for the students' learning process. And then also Suzanne recommended that I show from a teacher's perspective some of the reports that are available. So I'm going to go back here as an instructor. Then I can look at my class. I can look at the custom exams, and these are exams that have to be scheduled more for summative assessment, as Suzanne mentioned. Students will not have seen these questions within the course. Instructors who would like to have a valid summative assessment, they can assign these to their students. All right. So here on the class is just a sample class that's set up. I can go to the reports. And those of you who would be using a learning management system like Canvas or Blackboard, you would not go through this interface, but there would be some integration with your own LMS, and so it would look a little bit different, but the same information would be available. So I'm going to go into the class gradebook. And I think I have data mostly in the Word chapter. So if I look here, I can see the individual students and how they performed on the labs. If I want to see lessons and videos, I can do that too, to see how much time they spent or which videos they viewed. And especially if I'm concerned that there's a student who might be struggling a bit, there's this student here that who did not perform a lab right there. Then I can go back and I can drill down a little bit deeper. Let's go to individual scores by product. And I can choose a student I may be concerned about and see, all right, how much time are they spending in the course and what can I do to help them succeed? Just two examples of reports that are available right here within LabSim. So I think that gives you a bit of a feel for the course, both the student and the instructor side. And I think I just want to go into questions right now. Any questions that you might have, or Dave, if you'd like me to cover anything else, please go ahead and let me know. I'd be happy to look at some other things.
I'll just read off some of the questions that we've got throughout the webinar. And we've got some questions that I think were answered as you were demoing the product, Paul. One thing that we have, and perhaps Suzanne, you can answer this, is someone has said, have you used capstone projects before? They said they've used it in their course. Do you have any tips or suggestions for capstone projects?
I have not used the capstone projects that TestOut supplies, although next year that was one of the things that I wanted to start to implement. I like the certification, but I also wanted them to have a project where they're using the live application, and since we have that available on campus, students don't have an excuse not to use the live application. And I think I would like to incorporate that, but I have not yet.
Someone just asked me if we're going to have PowerPoints available. Absolutely. We can get you the slides from this. We're going to be sending out a recording of this as well. Another question is, someone asked about Outlook. Yes, the Desktop Pro course does include Outlook. That's for the MOS Outlook. The section that Paul showed us was just the regular Desktop Pro. But Desktop Pro Plus aligns more to MOS objectives, a little bit more content, and then we added Outlook as well. So someone asked, is this all PC-based, or is there any Mac-based instruction as well? Paul, maybe you could answer that. I don't believe we do much Mac instruction in the computer basics, do we?
Yeah, that's right. It is mostly PC focused. Of course, students can complete the labs on a Mac through their browser, right? But it is going to be, and so we do have to give them a little bit of instruction at the beginning. Some differences. And let me go here so we have here at the beginning tips for Mac users. Just not very many tips, but we do emphasize that students should be aware that the course teaches Microsoft Office for Windows. So Microsoft Office for Windows rather than for Mac. So yeah, it is PC focused.
I can add a few comments to that. I have students that always ask that question before they start because they're using a Mac, and can I do my homework on my Mac? And I say yes, and it's wonderful to be able to say yes, because I couldn't say that with my previous course. As long as they know a few of these little tips, they usually can accomplish every single lab without a problem. And then being able to transfer that skills to a Mac-based program is pretty easy.
Someone asked about integration with Canvas, some deep linking. And yes, we do integration with Canvas. I actually have on the line with us, his name's Ken Clark. He's with our implementation services at TestOut. And Ken, if you want to chime in and talk about some of the things that we can do with this, particularly the LMS integration. I think I got you on mute, Ken. Let me unmute you here. All right, you should be
there
good.
We go. Thank you, Dave. I was trying to speak. It's good to be with everyone, and thank you, Paul. Thank you, Suzanne. The question referencing deep linking, I think, and with Canvas, we do provide that. We enjoy doing that. We have a full complement of implementation services that we actually provide as we kind of go down a roadmap process to ensure your success as an educational institution instructor, ultimately gearing towards the student's success. And along that roadmap, we definitely cater to LMS integration. We can provide a single sign-on, simply getting the student in, or we can provide through an actual API app into Canvas the ability for scores to be returned on an assignment by assignment basis. Obviously, there's a little bit more to pulling that off than what I've referenced, but that certainly doesn't mean it's difficult. We enjoy partnering with both instructor and LMS or Canvas admin alike to bring that to pass. Does that answer the question there?
Yeah, and we just had someone ask about Moodle integration as well, and Blackboard. Just want to point, we do integrate with that as well.
That is correct. We have an application plugin for Blackboard, similar to the API that I referenced for Canvas. With Moodle, currently it's an LTI level of integration. LTI is going to be recognizable for those LMS admins. Great.
Someone asks us, Paul, how much time in hours would it take for a novice student, or perhaps Suzanne, you can answer this. How much time would this take in hours for a novice student to complete the entire course?
Yeah, I know you have estimates on all of the lesson times, which I've used to plan my course, but I found that students can complete that much quicker. It really varies, but I think that typically within the time frame that TestOut has given is well within what a novice can do. And so the times that are listed for TestOut, I believe for the TestOut Pro Plus, I can't remember the exact number. Maybe someone can help me out, but it was pretty true to form for, I would say, for novice students.
I'll pull up the course lesson plan, and it has the time while we're talking here.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised there in Suzanne's comment that the estimates that we gave were assuming that the students were going to be doing a lot of practice in the labs, and so a novice student would do more practice, and so they would be closer to that estimate. Students, certainly the more experienced students, will do it much quicker.
So I will be sending a course outline to everyone, but at the bottom in the appendices, you'll be able to see the approximate time in the course. And whoops, this is the course outline. I want to do the lesson plan. Let me do this is all available on our website as well. So this is a lesson plan. And at the bottom of the appendices, approximate time in the course is 74 hours and 49 minutes. That's a lot of materials. So that's for the Desktop Pro Plus. And then there's also information about the certification prep materials as well, which should be in the Desktop Pro. Got a lot of questions I'm going through. I see quite a few IE Labs, Internet Explorer, which is in a browser that's being delivered with the Microsoft simulations. They're asking why we're showing IE so much. Is there a question why you're using Internet Explorer. Is there other browsers that might work? I think that's the question they're asking, Paul.
So that's a question about the simulations themselves, why we simulate IE. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So short answer to that is that we had built an Internet Explorer simulator a few years ago, and it was the easiest for us to use to teach the principles that we were trying to teach about web browsers and security within browsers. But we are working on adding to those simulators so that we can expand out from that. So it was meant to just be more of a generic tutorial and hands-on experience in using some browser, and so we used Internet Explorer. With certainly that will need to change as IE will likely be going away. So we'll in our next release, then we'll be looking at changing that simulator.
A few questions ask about the using the actual Microsoft Live applications. If we ever do that, how that works. Perhaps, Paul, you could talk about our simulations, and then Suzanne, you could talk about how you've used the actual live applications in the class.
Yeah, just briefly, and I think Suzanne would be great to speak to this. She's already talked a little bit about having a workshop in class where the students use the live applications, and we highly recommend, especially for students who want to achieve mastery of Office applications, obviously they need to use the live applications. So we do have capstone projects where they're projects that are intended to be used in the live applications. We have also some recommended exercises in our instructor PowerPoints that after students have had the training and achieved certain skills in our simulations, that then they go and explore more features and do more in the live applications. So that's certainly expected that the students would be getting into the live applications as part of their learning.
Yes, I've used the PowerPoints that include a practice file and some activities at the end. So occasionally when I have time in class, and like I presented, I only meet once a week, but when I do have that extra time, I'll do an extra activity with the students in the class. Sometimes it's introducing new concepts, like I did one on pivot tables, or it's just doing something that isn't able to be simulated, like I was talking about the word macro. And I had received a comment from my students in my course evals from last semester that they really liked having that option and that they learned a lot from that. So definitely using as much as the live software for additional work is helpful.
Suzanne, someone asked you for your online class if you do that macro project for them as well, or if it's just for your traditional class.
That's a good question. I have not, but to make it, I mean, if I really wanted to, probably what I would do is do a recording of it. Because we're using TestOut, I'm not requiring my online students to actually have Office 2016. So, I can't really require them to have that live application if it's not part of the requirements for the course. But yeah, I could definitely do that. I have not done that with my online class, and that's mostly because I've only been teaching it for a year. So as you know, as an instructor, the farther you go down the road, the more you can add and improve on your course, and that's one of the things that I'd like to do.
Yeah, Suzanne, I think that is such a great exercise to do in class. I taught academic writing courses mostly for first-year students, and that would have been, I'm not sure if they would have jumped right into doing macros in that particular class, but boy, to be able to do MLA format and do some macros, boy, that sounds like a great workshop.
Yeah, and TestOut does do a lesson on macros. It just doesn't have the simulations that go with it. So students that are interested can watch the video, and it has a demonstration, which is, I guess, what I would do if I were to do a video of it. So yeah, I'm not sure if it would be real practical with an online class because they already do have the curriculum in TestOut.
Great. Paul, someone asks if other products such as our Linux Pro we use the same style of labs as the Desktop Pro, like the skills challenge and applied labs, if that's a plan in the future or not?
Yeah, great question. And I am not working on those courses, but I have been privy to some of the conversations, just even in the last couple of weeks, where we are looking at least for the skills labs, integrating some form of those in the IT certification courses. So that is something that we are currently working on. In some places, it wouldn't make a lot of sense in terms of the repetition that we offer in the Office in the Desktop Pro course. But that is definitely something that we're looking at right now. Currently, those of you who are not familiar with our IT courses, the lab format for those courses, for the most part, is like our applied labs in Desktop Pro, where the students have a scenario, they complete all of the tasks, and then they click done to get feedback. But we are looking at integrating more of we call it drill and practice, where it makes sense in the IT courses.
Someone asked Paul if they can see part of the Desktop Pro certification exam. I don't know if you could pull it up. Maybe show them the practice exam that's included, or something that they
we could show that. Obviously, since this is a certification and we want it to be valid, right? We don't show the actual questions even to instructors for that the certification. But yeah, let me show you what other materials we have. Just recently, I think it's within the last few months, we created a Desktop Pro practice exams. So if students work their way through these practice exams, that they will be very prepared to do well on the actual certification. So we give them a couple of videos to give them tips on how to prepare. We give them the objectives and answer some questions. And then we offer quite a bit of practice, these domain exams. For the most part, we pull from the course questions that are similar to the questions that are covered on the certification exam. And then for this certification practice exam, certainly different questions that you would see on the actual exam, but they would prepare students very well for that exam. So if you wanted to go in and, well, I guess I could have clicked on this, right, and started it out, but you can see it has 13 questions, which there are also 13 questions on the certification exam. Limit of 2 hours. Most students finish in much less time than that. So I won't bring that up here because we would just walk through the questions, but the certification exam does cover, the Desktop Pro certification exam does cover Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So all three in one, and we worked really hard to make it a good exam and did a lot of psychometric analysis to make sure that it was a good exam, and we think that it is. And I'm very pleased to see that Suzanne's students have a high pass rate. There are other schools that do not have as high of a pass rate, and we have looked into reasons why, in terms of best practices. And certainly some of the things that Suzanne talked about are reasons why I believe her students have done so well in terms of her policies, and then giving the students a lot of practice, encouraging them to come back time and time again to do new labs. So we do offer some tips as well for students directly on how to pass that exam.
Someone's asking if these exams, the Desktop Pro exam, aligns with the MOS exams at all.
Another great question. It certainly overlaps, but it does not align with those exams. Those exams would be, include some more advanced features than what we cover on the Desktop Pro certification exam, and they're much longer. So the MOS exams, they have 2 exams for Word, 2 exams for Excel, all different exams. The Desktop Pro, we could not obviously cover the applications in a lot of depth, right, where we had to limit the time in a single exam. So there's overlap, significant overlap, but the MOS exams go beyond what we cover here.
I can speak to that a little bit. I've taken the Desktop Pro certification through TestOut, and I've also just recently took MOS certification for 2016. I took it last week, actually. I had a couple of extra vouchers. So I've just recently but that's the core. They have, like you said, they have different levels. I would say that the Desktop Pro certification matches pretty well with the core, the basic MOS certification. I didn't really, sometimes the MOS is a little bit more detailed in its task, but it's the same type of task. So, not breaking any confidentiality rules, that's all I would say.
Yeah, that's great. But
I think it's pretty close, I would say.
Yeah, and we do provide, for those who have the Desktop Pro Plus course, we have a couple of videos to help students. Inevitably, they're going to see questions on the exam, things that they have never done before. So we give them some tips on how to approach questions like that, that they have no idea. And we know, okay, how do you do it? You go to the ribbon, find something that looks something like what you're being asked to do. And
yeah.
So I think that's usually helpful for students as well, for the MOS exams.
So I have a question. Someone says, is this a one-size-fits-all? For example, if a student is taking a one-credit course in one Office component, do they have to purchase all of Desktop Pro or Pro Plus with all of the Office components? That's something that I can answer, I guess. The way that, and there's some questions about pricing here as well. The way that it's set up is we give 18 months of access to students who buy individual licenses. And so we do have some schools that will use either the Desktop Pro, usually the Desktop Pro Plus, it does have more content to teach it over multiple semesters. As long as it stays within that 18 months of access, potentially a student could purchase one license and take different classes. Usually we found that there are some 3-credit like Excel only classes, and we found that there's not enough Excel content to cover a 3-credit class. But let's say you have 3 1-credit classes and you have the same students going through them, you potentially could use one license. And so the pricing for Desktop Pro is $109 per student license. That includes the 18 months of access. And then for the Desktop Pro Plus, it's $149 per student license. And that includes, that Desktop Pro Plus covers Outlook, but it also covers additional content to prepare for the MOS certifications. Someone says, hey, our TestOut changed versions in the middle of a semester. It causes some confusion for students. Paul, maybe you could talk to the 2019 version of Office that's coming out. It's supposed to come out, as we've heard, in this fall, and what TestOut plans on doing, and what schools and students can do when our new version comes out, let's say in the middle of a semester.
Yeah, so whenever we have an update to a course that affects the course outline, then that's a course update to another version. So students will not be automatically moved to that other version. So we try to be really careful about that. If we do release a patch to the course in the middle of a semester, we really work hard to not have any disruption. And and we have had some small disruptions in the past that we strenuously try to avoid. For the Office 2019 version, then that would be the next version, version 5. The current version of Desktop Pro and Desktop Pro Plus is version 4. So we would be moving to a version 5. And instructors have up to, I should know the exact time, 9 months or a year to upgrade to that, to the new version. So they can continue using the older one, the older 2016 version for a semester or two before they would be sort of strongly encouraged to upgrade to the next version. And we will be coming out with, since Office 2019 has not even been released, even as a pre-release, I can't give you a lot of details in terms of how that new course would be changed, but we certainly will be working on improving everywhere that we can with the courseware, and it would cover all of the relevant and new Office 2019 features.
Someone asked about what they have to do to get the support to integrate in LMS. Ken, it looks like you're answering some questions on here. Do you want to just tell what implementation services can do for schools looking to implement this? We know that for a lot of schools, moving over rewriting curriculum takes a lot of time, and so we have a team of implementation people, and it doesn't cost any additional price for the school or the student. And so Ken, if you can just go through, you've talked about LMS, maybe talk about the implementation that your team does.
Sure thing. Thanks a bunch, Dave. We like to focus on building what we might call an implementation roadmap. Part of that's LMS, as we discussed earlier. Another part of that is product version migration, where we would look at, as was just recently referenced, right, where we're going to get together and we're going to discuss and put together an actual plan that has the least possible impact on instructors and students, and of course programs, right? I'll briefly step you through the roadmap that we provide. The first thing we'd do is we'd meet and we'd listen to you, and we put together an initial plan, okay, about how we can begin to create success. All right, we're going to create an action roadmap and plan to pull that together, and that's going to include integration. We're going to talk about whether a smaller pilot's going to be more effective compared to a larger and full rollout. We're going to talk about instructor training and onboarding. We can provide training to large groups. We can provide training one-on-one. We love to come on site and provide group training as well, okay? So we can talk about that from multiple levels as we onboard the product with your organization. We, of course, have ongoing support as well on a technical level, solid technical people to back with every sort of question there. We also have a variety of academic and sales-related levels of support as well. Briefly touched on earlier, we love to partner and develop course and work towards assessment designs that work in harmony with your organization as appropriate, and perhaps as necessary. We love to dig into the data that we're able to gather and utilize that and leverage that for your success. Okay, so we provide that service as well. We gather all kinds of information from the student. We'll leverage that. And then lastly, what I mentioned actually a few minutes ago is product version migration, where we want to minimize the impact that moving from one version of a product to another can have. We want that to be smooth. It needs to be smooth.
Question for Paul. Someone says if in any of this is Flash, is it based on HTML5? He says he asked because he has issue updating their Flash player, and because Flash is on its way out.
Yes, this is HTML5 based courseware.
Someone also asked about the average markup that bookstores might charge. That can vary. You know, we've seen a big charge to very little. There is an option for students to purchase directly from TestOut. We have a shopping cart, and we can provide instructors a college discount code that students can purchase directly, and it'll be at that price without a markup. So it kind of depends on your school's situation and how things are set up, but we can do either way. We can provide an ISBN number for the student license, or we can provide a discount code for them to purchase directly. Someone also asks if we offer anything other than topics on Microsoft Office, and we do. The majority of the rest of our courses are IT based, so PC, hardware, software, operating systems, servers, systems, and they're all tailored around an IT certification. So the CompTIA A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, Linux Plus, and then we go into the Microsoft Server and the Cisco, the CCNA certification. And that's all available on our website. Someone also asks, can see if the students are having troubles with doing the labs, and if we can design if the instructor can design their own lab. Paul,
so that question is probably for me. Sure, yeah. We do not have the tools for instructors to design their own lab. That's certainly something we've looked at doing. And we allow instructors to create custom exams and they can write their own multiple choice questions as part of those exams, but they are not able to create their own labs. They would be able to choose from the pool of labs that we have available. And we do have some labs that the students will not have seen in the course. If an instructor wants to create a custom exam made up of labs that the students have not seen before, and they can pick and choose whatever they would like. But no, we do not currently have the tools for them to create their own labs with their own scenarios.
Someone asked us if this can run on tablets and phones. Paul, can you answer that?
The short answer is no. That we are, again, something that we're always looking at doing. Students can see the videos and the text lessons from an iPad, but they will not be able to run the labs on a phone or a tablet. They need to be on a laptop or a desktop computer.
Have you found that that's a need for students wanting to study on a phone, or do you think it's just better to keep them on a computer? What are your thoughts on that?
I have had a few questions that were specifically that question to me before they started the course. And of course I asked you all about it. I think it's important that they have a computer because they're eventually going to need it anyway for, working in the application. Yeah, I had to give them the same answer, that basically no, they had to have a computer to be able to do the simulations, but they could watch the videos and do the text reading outside of using the computer. I don't know that it's a definite need.
Yeah, thank you. Just some quick questions to answer that I'll go through. Someone asked about course outlines. Yes, we are going to send you some course outlines for these. And then someone asked about getting a free trial. If you see this link, anyone that wants a free trial, they can go to testout.com/desktop and request free access, and we will get you call you and get you set up. We're also going to send out a recording of this, by the way. I think we're getting close. I know we're over the hour. I want to wrap up pretty soon. Someone asked about us teaching web design or Adobe. We don't have any courseware on those. Perhaps in the future. We've been mostly on the IT and computers and office side as a company. Some ask about getting questions about virtualization and cloud computing training. And that's also something that's, as a discussion here at TestOut, is what are the next courses that we're going to be doing. Virtualization, cloud, there's more in cybersecurity, there's more in computers and basic computers that we could cover. And so we try to be open about what we're developing and try to communicate that to customers and to the academic world. When we do decide to create a new course, we definitely will message that out to everyone. But yeah, we should be wrapping up. Someone asks, this could be for you, Paul, is this a Mac compatible? Is there an ebook included? Is there student startup instructions including, so when they first start the class?
We do have a getting started guide that we provide for instructors and for students to have access to, but the main thing students need is an access code, and there are different ways of doing that through their individual schools. And they log in and they have access to the course in labs. And of course, the LMS integration will be a little bit different, but we do not have an ebook that as a separate product, although we can make the materials available to instructors or students who would like them in more of at least the text materials in PDF format. We can make those available, but that's not automatically available within the course.
I think we've answered almost all the questions. Someone I think asked this later on. I think they joined later. They asked about this being used for online, and absolutely, this is meant for online, traditional, or hybrid classes. Suzanne teaches both an online and traditional classes. So make sure to, if you missed part of the webinar, you can watch it and see how she uses it. Someone also asked if we have any contact at Certiport about setting up a testing center. Yeah, we can try to set you up with contact there. Certiport is actually in Utah with us, close by. You can also just go to their website, I think, and they can give you instructions as well. And I think that's it for questions. We really appreciate everyone's time. Sorry this went over a little bit. Thank you so much to Suzanne and Paul for putting the time to do this webinar. And I guess it's Paul and Suzanne, if you want to say thanks, and we can shut this thing down. I think it's gone over time.
We're ready to go.
Okay.
Yes,
thank
Suzanne,
you for the opportunity to share.
Hey.
Thank you so much, Suzanne.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, have a great rest of the week.